Coming up on Inside the Summit League, North Dakota State out to a quick 2-0 start as Summit League play gets started in women's soccer. South Dakota stays scorching hot in volleyball. The Coyotes remain unbeaten in Summit League play. And we've got the preseason polls and the players to watch in men's and women's basketball coming up. Hello, welcome to the show. Got hoops and soccer coming up in a bit, but we are 2 weeks into Summit League play now in volleyball and a couple of surprises at the top of the standings. South Dakota is one of them, and actually the Coyotes have been hot from day one this year. The Yotes have kept their paws on the pedal now that Summit League play has started. USD beat North Dakota State on Friday night and then followed that with a sweep at South Dakota State on Sunday. Ashley Beener with a team-high 14 kills in this match for the Jackrabbits, but Audrey Rieg matches that with 14 kills of her own. Leanne Williamson's team wins 3-0 again. The Coyotes have not lost a set yet in their first 4 Summit League matches. Well, the other unbeaten and a bit of a surprise in league play so far is Fort Wayne. The Dons knock off Denver Friday night in straight sets, 27-25 in the first 2 and then 25-8 in the third set. Lauren Hoffman with a dozen kills for Fort Wayne. She hits .435 for the match. IPFW downs Denver in 3 sets, and Fort Wayne is 3-0 in Summit League play. Players of the week, you got Natalie Seiler from Fort Wayne, 3 solo blocks and 3 aces in that win over Denver. Kylie Simmons at Western Illinois, a career-high 37 digs for her in Western Illinois' win at Omaha. And you saw Audrey Rieg from South Dakota, 20 kills in the win over North Dakota State, and then 14 kills, 10 digs in the win over South Dakota State. Well, women's soccer coming up next. With a short league season, you cannot afford to mess around. Western Illinois on the board with a win in the first weekend of Summit League play.
Inside the Summit League on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Dakota Land Honda, and South Dakota Corn.
Welcome back. You do not get to mess around in Summit League soccer. You get to play everybody in the league one time, and then just the top 4 in the standings get to move on to the Summit League tournament. And North Dakota State's women, they know not to mess around. The Bison won 7 of their 8 league matches last year before moving on to win the postseason tournament as well. NDSU was off to a 2-0 start this year. They get an outstanding performance in goal from their freshman keeper on Sunday at Oral Roberts. Monica Polger is the Bison keeper. She stops all 6 shots that she sees on her way to a shutout. Amy Yang scores the only goal of the match on a PK late in the first half. And North Dakota State beats Oral Roberts 1-0, and the Bison are 2-0 to start Summit League play. In Macomb, Illinois, Western Illinois is even in the league at 1-1 after a win over South Dakota on Sunday. Great save early by USD keeper Sydney Harden. But not going to get to this one. Emily Bowman for Western Illinois on a blast just outside the box. That's her 3rd goal of the season, and the Leathernecks beat the Coyotes 1-0. Players of the week are both Bison, though. Amy Yang had that goal against Oral Roberts. She has 4 goals on this season, and all of them have been game winners. She also assisted on the game winner in North Dakota State's 2-1 win at Omaha last Thursday. NDSU keeper Polgar, meanwhile, back-to-back shutouts for her. 8 for 8 on saves in the 2 wins for North Dakota State. And Denver, by the way, is tied with North Dakota State at 2-0 after the first week of play. Denver with road wins over Western Illinois and IUPUI over the weekend. We've got a check on men's soccer next, and I don't personally do it, but I hear you can run for fun, and you can also do it to help out your Summit League school, like they do in Fort Wayne. Welcome back. Several Summit League men's soccer teams stepping out of conference for matches. Earlier this week, Western Illinois was at home against Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And Milwaukee with a couple of quick goals midway through the first half. One on a free kick from 25 yards straight away that hits the top rail and goes in. And you don't think that ball gets there in a hurry? Tell that to Western keeper Tim Hansen. Another one just out of his reach. And the Leathernecks dropped this one 2-0. Western will get back at it this Friday at home against Oral Roberts. And there were a few league matches this past Saturday. Here's a quick peek at the players of the week following those. Jacob Murphy at Fort Wayne, 2 goals in the Dons' 3-1 win over Oral Roberts. Fort Wayne is 1-1 in league play. Fazlo Ali Hajic at Omaha, a goal and 2 assists in the Mavericks' 3-1 win over IUPUI. Omaha gets its first league W. And Sam Hamilton at Denver, part of the Pioneers unit that gave up just 1 shot in Denver's 1-0 win over Eastern Illinois. Denver has 6 shutouts already this season. They have allowed just 7 goals in their 11 matches. Well, ask any athletic director, it ain't easy to fund a college athletic department. So you come up with all kinds of ways to buy into the community and have the community buy into you, like this event in Fort Wayne.
Well, we were so fortunate to get good weather and have a good turnout of runners and walkers participate in the 2nd annual Mastodon Run for Scholarships. Raised good money for scholarships today, and that's what it's about, so that our student athletes can continue to compete at a high level and then walk across that stage in graduation. Yeah, well, we spend over $2 million in scholarships a year, but there's room for growth. To be even more competitive in terms of recruiting. And this is an all hands on deck sort of approach to raising money for scholarships. Our student athletes and coaches are directly involved. Our student athletes do such a good job in the community in terms of service. And that maybe makes this race a little different.
Well, up next, basketball practices have started. The Summit League preseason polls are out. We will run them down and hash them over with our hoops analyst, Brad Newitt. Welcome back to Inside the Summit League. College basketball teams all across the country have started practice this week, and the preseason polls for the Summit League are out. We're joined by Brad Newitt, our college basketball analyst. And Newitt, this is the coaches and the sports information people at the schools and selected members of the media that make up these preseason polls for Summit League basketball. You and I don't get a vote in this,
no. That's all right.
But we're going to talk about it for sure. And they're actually usually pretty accurate on the women's side. In the last 20 years, 15 of those 20 years, the preseason favorite in this poll has gone on to win the regular season championship. So we'll put a little stock in.
Yeah, so these people, they have a pretty good track record for us to go off of. And I think this year their number 1 selection's got a pretty good chance to do that, to hold up to that bargain.
All right, let's start with the women. And the pick to win the Summit League Women's Basketball Championship this year is South Dakota State. And they are loaded in the 17th year for Aaron Johnston as the head coach with the Jackrabbits. They've been the tournament champions in the Summit League the last 2 years and 7 of the last 8 years. And they actually went to the NCAA tournament and won a game last year, beat Miami before losing to Stanford. And they are stacked and loaded with 5 starters coming back this year.
Yeah, I think that's the key, is they have everybody back off this team last year that was really peaking at the end of the year, like you said. Was really a basket away from knocking off Stanford and making the Sweet 16. And so to have them number 1, I think a clear-cut favorite. They were the runaway choice in the poll when you looked at how the points all got tabbed up, and for good reason.
Jackrabbits got 30 of the 34 first-place votes to win it this year. And again, they were 27-7 last year. All 5 of those starters coming back. In second, IUPUI. This is a team that has given South Dakota State a lot of trouble over the last couple of years. They had 21 wins last year, beat South Dakota State at home in Indianapolis.
Well, and a team that I think has shown really flashes of being able to play at the top of the Summit League, but maybe hasn't always put all the pieces together at the end of the season to make that run through the Summit League tournament. To me, it'll be interesting to see if this team can do that. And they've got some veteran leadership to do that. this year in their lineup.
Top 2 scorers are back, as you said. They lost to Omaha in the first round of the Summer League tournament last year, but IUPUI has always been a very good defensive team under Austin Parkinson in the last half dozen years. Third place to South Dakota, and what a year it was for the Coyotes last year. 32 wins. They were the Summer League regular season champions, won 15 out of 16 games. Their only loss in the league season was to Oral Roberts, and then they went on and won the WNIT championship.
Yeah, fantastic season. I mean, just a storybook season for USD, and of course winning the WNIT and doing it in really dominating fashion, winning at home. And but they lost a lot off of that team, of course, Nicole Seacamp being the headliner, and so a lot of new faces, and also probably even more importantly, a new coach too. I think that's going to be a big thing. Can USD answer that? Amy
Williams, two-time Summer League head coach of the year on the women's side. Now at Nebraska, Don Plitzowite takes over as the head coach at South Dakota, one of the 2 new coaches in the league this year. In fourth in the voting is Oral Roberts. 10-6 in the league last year. They were 4th in the Summer League standings. They've got 3 really good guards back this year. Remember all those freshmen they had a couple of years ago? They have now turned into sophomores and juniors. Kaylin Mayberry, Faith Iam, Jordan Doyle, all those players back for Oral Roberts.
And I think this is a team that's poised to make a big step. Can they be the one that maybe challenges South Dakota State this year? I know they're picked 4th in the poll, but to me they're really an up-and-coming team that, again, was playing well at the end of the year, and once that younger talent got more experience playing together, I think this could be a team that could really make some moves this year.
They did get one first place vote this year. Omaha, 5th in the poll this year. They were 7-9 in the Summit League last year. A lot of scoring back with Michaela Shaw, who led the league in scoring last year. They got Remy Davenport back. Ellie Brecht is a really good 3-point shooter. A lot of offense coming back for Omaha.
Yeah, plenty of points in that lineup. And anytime you have a dynamic player like Michaela Shaw, she's the kind of player that can carry a team single-handedly to wins. And so they're going to be a dangerous team, especially on their home floor.
They did lose Caroline Hogue, who led the Summer League in blocks last year, was a really good young player for Omaha, went back home to Arkansas, and she's going to play at a Division II school there this year. Western Illinois comes in 6th. 500 in the league last year at 8-8. They've graduated their 2 top scorers, Michelle Maher and Sophie Reichelt. They've got a good sophomore coming back in Taylor Hagenbottom, who averaged 12 points and 5 rebounds a game.
I think this is a team that is in a little bit of a rebuilding mode, but always just so well coached too. I think they're a solid team that always does compete at a very high level.
North Dakota State is going to be intriguing in the 7th spot. Won just 2 games in the league last year. They have 6 freshmen coming in on the roster this year, and they also have Taylor Thunstead back. She will be a junior and was 2nd in the league in scoring last year.
Well, Thunstead had a great year last year. Could she follow that up? But like you said, she's going to have a very young supporting cast around here. How does that group come together? How do they mature through the year? That'll dictate a lot about NDSU's season.
Yeah, they've got a couple of other seniors that might be in that starting 5, but a lot of youth on that North Dakota State team. Denver coming in 8th. Paige Bradley, I should say, very good guard, is gone, but they've got 4 seniors coming back, and they have Jordan Alt, a junior, or last year's a sophomore, was 2nd in the league in rebounds.
I think this is a team that just needs to strive to some consistency. We saw some nice flashes again by them. They're really tough on their home floor. Can they go out and get road wins?
Fort Wayne coming in at 9th. They've got the other new coach in the league in Nisi Nelson. Top 3 scorers gone, including Camilla Carter, who averaged 16 points a game last year.
I think definitely rebuilding time for Fort Wayne, but we've seen them be a program that has been able to get some homegrown talent and be very competitive.
All right, preseason player of the year is Macy Miller at South Dakota State. She is a junior, 14 points a game. Not gaudy numbers other than her free throw numbers. She shot 93% and led the league in free throw shooting. Played 27 minutes a game last year. Will she play more, or is that just AJ's system at SDSU?
That seems to be his system. I mean, he has such a depth of talent in this program that he doesn't need his starters to play 35 minutes a game. And Miller certainly looked like maybe at times last year she was going to go through the sophomore slump, but really righted the ship, had a great second half to her season. I think she's really poised to lead this team.
All right, she is part of the first team, and here's the rest of them. Includes Clarissa Ober and Ellie Thompson from South Dakota State, Danielle Lawrence, Michael Rogers from IUPUI, and then Michaela Shaw, a senior at Omaha. And South Dakota State, between the first and the second team, they've got their whole starting 5 on those 2 preseason teams. Games get started on November 11th, and we can't wait for basketball. And we'll be right back to check the men's voting There were 4 teams that got first place votes: Fort Wayne, South Dakota State, North Dakota State, and IUPUI. We'll tell you who got the most, and check out the men's preseason poll when we come back.
Inside the Summit League on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Dakota Land Honda, and South Dakota Corn.
Welcome back. Let's get to men's basketball in the preseason poll for the Summit League out this week, and jumping right in with Fort Wayne in the top spot. Brad Newitt, they 24 wins last year for the Mastodons. They tied for first in the regular season with South Dakota State, and they are the pick to win it this year.
I think a great choice. And when you look at what they have coming back, and especially John Conchar had a great freshman year, solid player, great rebounder. And then Mo Evans, a player that they lost, Tom, early in the Summit League season last year. He appears poised to be back onto this team, and I think with those two right there, you've got two very solid players to anchor this squad.
And then a couple of transfers. They've got a guy named Bryson Scott, a transfer from Purdue that you think is going to be pretty good. A 6'1" guard who's from Fort Wayne. And then Xavier Taylor, a transfer from Bradley. He is from Chicago, but played at Bradley, 6'9", and you think these two guys are going to be pretty good.
Yeah, those two guys are going to make an impact into this team as well. And you put those two pieces in with that, and I think you've got a group that has a winning mentality, already knows how to get things done in the Summit League, and I think they're a team that you really got to be ready to see at the top.
All right, behind Fort Wayne, coming in at number 2, South Dakota State. 26 wins last year for the Jackrabbits. 4 senior guards gone, though. Knew it with DeAndre Parks, George Marshall, Jake Biddle, Keaton Moffitt. So they got Mike Dahm, the freshman of the year, coming back, and he's going to be a huge part of this team.
Well, certainly that's where it all begins. It's going to center around Dahm. You expect this team to play through Dahm. Expect for him to see the ball in his hands a lot. I don't think there's any secret to that. I think the big question for South Dakota State is what kind of guard play do they get? And they've brought in some transfer players at those positions. They also have some younger players that have been in their program at the guard spots. How do those pieces all fit together for this team? If they can get good guard play to go along with Dahm, then they can really challenge for the Summit League title.
Yeah, Jacks have 2 graduate transfers, one named A.J. Hess, the other is Michael Orris, and then 2 JUCO guards as well. They're going to play a part in that guard rotation for South Dakota State. In third in the voting, North Dakota State, the Bison, 20 wins again last year. They lose Corey Brown and Chris Kading, but they got Paul Miller, A.J. Jacobson, Kai Cabellis, Carlin Dupree, Dexter Werner, all those guys back. That's a pretty good starting 5 to build around.
It certainly is. And then they've got a freshman that they redshirted up there too, Dane Gu. Keep an eye on this kid. Very athletic player out of Sioux Falls. I think they're expecting him to make an impact. My one concern with NDSU, Tom, is I feel like they've lost their best defenders in Brown, you mentioned specifically. And so we'll see. How is this team defensively? And if they can get that going to go along with that starting 5, like you mentioned, I think they'll be very solid.
All right, Omaha comes into the 4th spot. 18 wins for the Mavericks last year. They finished 3rd in the league last year and averaged 85 points a game. They scored more than anybody else in the league. Lost Devin Patterson and Jake White, but they've got Tradeon Hollins coming back.
Well, Hollins is a kid that can really affect the game on both ends of the floor. Lightning quick, of course, led the Summit League in steals, so he's really a game changer there. I also think Trayshawn Thurman is a player that, going into his junior year this year, he can continue to progress like he has. He could really be a dominant player for them in the low post.
In the 5 spot, IUPUI, and these guys are going to be intriguing as well. Got their top 2 scorers back from last year. Darrell Combs averaged 16 a game, Matt O'Leary at about 10 points a game. And then they've got 2 transfers that you're going to watch as well. One's from Kent State. His name is Kellen Thomas, a 5'11" guard who scored 12 points a game last year for Kent State in a pretty good conference in the MAC.
Yeah, he's a graduate transfer, so he's already completed his degree at Kent State, can transfer and play right away. Veteran player that has played a lot of college basketball. I expect Thomas to make a big impact. And then Ron Patterson, another player, Tom, I think we need to watch. Sat out last year at IUPUI after transferring from Syracuse, so I think those 2 guys could really help this team.
All right, the Jags in the 5 spot. Right behind them is Oral Roberts, 6-10 in the league last year with the Golden Eagles. Big factor, obviously. Obi Omegano averaged 23 a game last year. He is gone, but they've got about everybody else back.
They do. They have a lot of role players that have been there in the past. Now, can any of them step up and kind of become more star players? I kind of get the feeling maybe some revamping going on at Oral Roberts, but that's not necessarily always a bad thing. I think this is a team that was hitting its stride towards the end of the year, almost upset South Dakota State in the Summit League tournament, and Scott Sutton, a fantastic coach that's been around for quite a while. I expect this team to be very good.
What about South Dakota coming in 7th in the voting this year? They were 8th in the league last year. 6 of their top 7 scorers from last year are gone, though, either graduated or transferred. They got Tyler Flack back and a kid named Trey Dickerson, a transfer from Iowa. What about the Coyotes?
Well, I think Dickerson's a big key to this team, and he's sat out a year, so he's practiced with USD for a whole year, but like you mentioned, transfer from Iowa, so he's played at that Big Ten level. They need him to be an impact scorer and leader on this team. And then Tyler Flack, a kid that's had to battle some injuries, and if he can stay healthy this year and play at a high level, those 2 players right there can be good anchors for USD.
Flack at about 10 points a game last year. In the 8th spot, Denver. They were 1 point away from knocking off South Dakota State in the Summit League semifinals. They lose Nate Engesser and Marcus Bird, a couple of really good shooters, but all those freshmen from last year, C.J. Bobbitt, Thomas Neff, Joe Rosga, are back this year, and they've got a new coach in Rodney Billups.
Yeah, they've got a new coach, and they're going to play a different style of basketball. I think everyone's knowing that's going to happen in the Summit League, and so to me, that's the biggest key is how does this whole unit transition into what Rodney Billups wants to do as far as tempo of play and defensive style. But in Rosga, you've got a great player, very smart player that can definitely shoot the basketball.
See Denver get up and down a little bit more than they have in the last couple of years. In the 9th spot, Western Illinois, 3 wins in the league last year. Garrett Covington is a senior now, averaged 18 a game last year, and they're going to ask him to do a lot again this year.
Yeah, and that's the big question is can he get anyone to come alongside him? And Covington, a fantastic talent, he's also got to score a little bit more efficiently. His shooting percentages dipped a little bit last year, and so can he score at a little bit of a higher level, making more shots? If so, this team could make some noise.
They got Jabari Sandifer at the guard spot, Mike McClusack, a good shooter, coming back alongside Covington. Preseason player of the year is the sophomore at South Dakota State, Mike Dahm. Only played 21 minutes a game last year, but he averaged 15 points, 6 rebounds a game, shot 42% on 3-point shots, and got to the free throw line a ton and shot 82% from there.
Yeah, I mean, had an amazing breakout freshman year, and I think the big question with him is now how does he handle being the marked man, the go-to player on this team for South Dakota State? All signs point to the fact that he should have another fantastic season.
And he's joined on the first team by Combs at IUPUI Covington. Conchai, we talked about. Tradeon Hollins, the reigning defensive player of the year. And then Paul Miller at North Dakota State on the first 6, I should say, on the men's side. And again, first game's about a month away for Summit League basketball. Thanks to Brad Newitt. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on Inside the Summit League.